Hello and welcome to episode 64 of Off the Bandstand. My name is Christian Wiggs. I am your host. Today's episode is Mathis Picard, a French-Malagasy pianist, composer, producer, and bandleader currently residing in New York City. Mathis is truly an artist that uses all palettes available to him to arrive at a beautifully unique style, including electronic bass music, jazz, classical, and stride piano. Mathis continues to share the stage with brilliant minds such as Mwenzo and the Shakes, Braxton Cook, Ron Carter, Lilius White, Lee Ritenour, and Wynton Marsalis. In this episode, we explore the beauty of what happens in silence. We also chat about being comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen, and an irredeemable moment of betrayal caused by a Casio keyboard. Moving on to the release of the week, this is Mathis's Sound Orchestra called World Unity that released in 2020, and it's a record that is so masterful that it causes you to throw back your head and laugh at every turn. Mathis is as thoughtful as he is genius, and after spending the better part of a week together, it's clear that his music is a direct reflection of the beautiful sentiments he lives by. If you want to support Mathis directly, you can head over to his website, mathis-music.com, and for all things Mathis all the time, you can follow him on Instagram at @we_Mathis Picard. Now moving on to the Monk shows of the week, the big ones that we want to mention are on Saturday, January 22nd, which will be the Benny Benack III Quartet, followed by on Monday, January 24th, will be the Christian Wiggs Big Band meets Benny Benack III. Tickets are available for the limited in-person audience at monksjazzclub.com, and as always, every show will be live streamed with links to donate in the top right-hand corner of the screen. That is it for all of the shows and albums we want to mention this week. Let's dive into episode 64, Mathis Picard. This is Off the Bandstand. Man, how are you? How are you feeling like right now in this moment?
In this moment right now, I'm feeling cool. I'm feeling relaxed. I'm feeling ready to have a beautiful conversation. And I was just talking to Derek. I just feel very supported. And specifically on this wonderful journey we've been on with the trio. You've taken such good care of us, and feel like a new friendship has come out of this. So I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling grateful.
Man, that makes me so happy, man. I feel the exact same way. I mean, it's invaluable to be able to like spend an extended amount of time with somebody, especially like upon first meeting them, you know, because I think there's so many like ways that maybe I can get neurotic about like small bursts with people for the first time, you know, because I'm like, oh, am I saying the right thing? Am I acclimating to their personality well enough? Am I being true in that moment with them? Or am I saying like what I think they might want to hear? But to be able to like break bread and like we were saying right before we started, like how valuable like acknowledging silence is. And, you know, I am someone who talks a lot, as evidenced by the, I guess, motivations to do a talk show. But you know, I've noticed like with Lydia and I have been together for the past 6 years, and we've talked about that, and your partner in a similar amount of time, right? Yeah. And I've just noticed that she's one of the first people I consciously was aware that I could sit for an extended amount of time and nothing could be said whatsoever, but I was not uncomfortable. And whenever I'm able to like, you know, dial in on that and realize that with somebody for the first time, I just go, oh man, this feels so good. This feels so special. And just there were moments where we were all like laughing and joking and in the car, and then the next where we just listened to you DJ the rest of the playlist, man, like starting with Earth, Wind and Fire and making our way all the way through, man. So I all of those sentiments cannot be more reflected back to you. I'm so thankful to have you guys here. It's been very, very fun. I also read that when you started playing at 3 that you were very passionate about music from the dance idiom. What do you mean by that?
From the dance, well, music that serves a purpose for dancing, and you know, dancing, the movement of the body, you know, that's, our bodies are also instruments. And I always notice, like, when music comes on and the very tiny indications that people are feeling the vibrations, you know, even if it's just this or the body movement. For me, that's something that's like really deep. That's like, how do you explain that? Like an energy comes through with music and people respond to it with their body. And so dancing and music for me go hand in hand, whether it's music that's for celebration or even if it's music to that's more on the sad side of things. You know, you can always express it with dance and with music. And for me, when I was very young, I stumbled upon this record that I know we both spoke about, I Am, Earth, Wind and Fire. And I just remember being 5-year-old French boy in the south of Paris and putting on that music every morning. I had like this little CD thing I would put under the bed. And then from that moment on, I knew that the music and the art I wanted to be a part of, I wanted it to affect all parts of the body, not just the intellectual. But I really, for what it did for me in my spirit and in the healing it brought to me through dancing is why I like that dance idiom.
I mean, do you find that you try to not consolidate's not the right word, but do you like to draw from all the different mediums of like the fine arts? Like, because I know we just talked about two. Obviously, we're talking about music, we're talking about dance. Do any of the other art mediums come into play? Well,
see, as my name is Mathis, I've always been surrounded by the comment, oh, like the painter. So I'm a super visual person, and you know, textures, patterns, films, all of it. I don't try and do things purposefully like I want to merge this and I want to merge this. Where I'm at in my life is I try to see what presents itself first, and then I put it together. I don't want to force a fusion. I want to feel the fusion of this. I'm interested in this right now, and this, and what is coming to me, and what wants to come together. Like that's not really for me to decide.
You mentioned something in, let me reference my note. Oh, it was the Duke Ellington interview thing that you did on the Estuary. And it was like the quote of like, why do I have to, you know, put a name to everything that I'm feeling? I'm sure you could say the quote better than myself. Also, why, because you call your setup the Estuary, right? Why that name?
So I'm going to answer both those questions. First of all, the estuary is because estuary is an ecological phenomenon where you have all of these streams and rivers and biological things moving together. And that's kind of what that was for me with all that equipment and all that gear. Is I wanted the technology to communicate to one another and have this MIDI set off this MIDI. And, you know, I like the idea of, because also I'm really into nature, describing and formulating ideas with the idea of nature. Even though I'm using technology, how can I use my love of nature to make something organic? And what Duke was saying, or Duke Ellington was saying, is why do we have to give it a name? Like, if it sounds good to my ears, then it sounds good. And obviously this is, you know, an age-old thing. Everyone has said this, particularly in the world of quote-unquote jazz, you know, and talking about putting names to things and why that can be dangerous sometimes, especially if those names were not made by you and created by other people to trying to say this word, forgive me, compartmentalize?
Compartmentalize,
Right, I did it right. You know, I really relate to that because I love music in general. I love what it does, how it brings people together, and there are definitely pockets of music that I like, you know, when we're talking about Earth, Wind & Fire's music, or we're talking about Duke Ellington's music, yes, it helps in a conversation to say, oh, this jazz music, this and that. But overall, the way that I like to talk and feel about music is without any of those terms.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, world unity is such a triumph, man. Like, it's so great. I was listening to it with Lydia the other day. We were stuffing the big band books, and I was like, Lydia, you have to listen to this first track. And you're right. Like, I mean, it's just like little things like the birds at the beginning, right? It's just, you know, that little kind of window into your soul, and like how you're like, yeah, I want nature to be a part of everything. And then it's just such a, over the course of what that first track is, like 8 minutes, something, it's extended. And it just feels like you are encapsulating all of the emotions and excitement and considerations of like the human experience into one thing that is so incredibly cohesive and beautiful. And it, you know, people might try to do something like that, and it might just feel like, oh, now we're going to this, now we're going to this. But it really feels like you were guiding us through that whole thing, and none of it feels, there's so much variation, but none of it feels contrived or like you're trying. Like, it really just feels like you're sitting down and it's all coming out at once. And so I'm curious, whenever you are writing stuff like that, that is kind of this big work, do you hear it all first, or do you try to be present exactly in that moment and go, all right, maybe I've got this motif, let me then just see what comes to me in that moment? Or do you hear it all at once?
Yeah, these compositional techniques, you know, I have to hear it in my head before I play the piano. I have to feel it in my mind and in my spirit first, because otherwise I'm just going to be noodling on the piano and just hitting random notes. And particularly for that record, for World Unity, what I would do when I was traveling on the road before the recording session, I would just walk around and imagine each track in my head, and I would time it, and I would it would help me. I would walk. Again, for me, walking is like dancing, you know.
Right.
So I'd walk and imagine the song in my head. I'd play the intro, and I already knew the players that I wanted them to play. So that kind of meditation is really important. And in terms of, you know, you're kind of hitting the spot on it. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to push that stuff. That's really a direct connection to the, like, who I am, and like all the different backgrounds I've had, and the languages I speak, and the accents I can get into. You know, after a while, I found out that I just couldn't control who I was anymore, and I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't. You know, I've done a lot of academia and music, a lot. And in there, you're given advice on what to do, how to present, what's right, what should be in this genre, if it's going to be that, what this and this. And I when it came time to make my music, I really just wanted to, first of all, let it be a process of me accepting me for all that I am, and the way that I hear sound and the way that I imagine it. That's part of the practice. It's a meditational practice for me when I compose, because it's about allowing yourself to be open so that you can just say what needs to be said. And it turns out the result sounds like a bunch of different music, you know, put together. But that's not really what I'm thinking about when I'm composing. I'm thinking about the humanity of, why am I doing this? Yeah. Like, why do I feel that I should write this thing right now, you know? So it's always connected to something deeper than just the music.
Yeah. I really love that you said that. I don't think, I want to make sure that I'm not direct quoting, because it was just a second ago, but you're like, I don't want to control, you know, who I am, or all these different like things. But for me, growing up, you know, I have an older brother. He could dance, he could act, he could sing. He was a brilliant percussionist, pianist, guitars, like anything with strings. And he was just so charismatic too. Like everyone loved him. He was always just ready to give somebody a hug. And I guess if I'm really being vulnerable and I'm being present to acknowledge my feelings there, I used to say, no, I don't feel like I'm living in the shadow, whatever, I just want to be better. But I was. And I was constantly overanalyzing every single thing that I was saying to people, because I wanted to make sure that if somebody was telling a joke that I was gonna ride on that wave and get them to laugh with me and be the one who got the laugh for my own personal like validation. And it was like really toxic because it inhibited my ability to like have genuine relationships with people, because I was constantly focused on how I could acclimate better and change myself. So I was not a very sure of myself person, and it caused me to overanalyze, and those effects are still present today, and I try to work through them like on this show, you know, like we're talking about right now. And that's amazing that you are in that space as you were coming up, and in a bunch of different environments too, with a bunch of different people that you came into contact with. Was it always that way?
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't, because I was, you know, when I moved and I would end up in a new community and I sounded a certain way, or like I looked different. You know, as a kid, you want to fit in. So exactly the same. You think that you have to fit in or you have to change for people to see you. But because I've moved so much, after a while, I had to come to terms with that. I can't please everyone. I can't be the version of me that I think they want. First of all, that doesn't make any sense, because I will never know what they want.
Right.
And I mean, I relate to what you're saying for sure. And it's, for me, it's a constant growth. And I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think the world is designed in a way to make us sometimes not like ourselves, so that we can buy in more to what we think gives us happiness, or what society thinks happiness is.
Yeah.
But isn't happiness just being happy to be yourself? And that's kind of what we're talking about.
Oof, that is so reassuring, man. For me in this moment, I'm sure for like a lot of people to hear that, just being like happy with yourself. I've talked about this before, that, you know, we're talking about this kind of external validation, right? And I think a lot of musicians put a lot of their validation in their instrument and, you know, how they sounded on the last gig. I know that that's what I would do. I was like, if I had a great night, ooh, I was living.
Yeah, then you feel it. Yeah.
And the next night, maybe I tried to take a chorus over something I didn't know the changes too well to, and asked myself, third tune of the gig, or to myself, I thought that way, and then it ruined my attitude until the next gig. And I was like placing my inherent value on my contributions, either to the musicians musically or personally, until the next one. And just with the pandemic too, again, I've said it on the show before with like Damien Garcia, another really great pianist here in Austin, but that we all had to be really okay with ourselves and do a lot of that inward reflection when all of the gigs were taken away. So like, we're gonna get the validation from playing Call of Duty and like being like way up on the leaderboards. Like maybe that's the way that I can impress people, but it just like kind of goes to show like maybe that's a good analogy, maybe that's a bad analogy, but the whole thing of like, nobody really cares when they look at your leaderboard thing, and if they do, then that's not really where you should be placing your sense of value in the first place. Similarly, if people only value you as a commodity like musically, it's a pretty hollow sense of validation, you know, as opposed to like as people, which is why I started this show in the first place. Is like, I'm afraid that sometimes people, with the advent of like Spotify and stuff, you can say you like someone or you don't like someone within 10 seconds. And it says you can write them off by clicking a button and closing a browser.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, you can appreciate the music so much more by getting to know them. And like, you're a perfect example of that, where I was listening to World Unity. I was like, there's so much here that I don't understand, that I'm so fascinated with, and I want to know everything behind it. You said that you were walking, and that's how you kind of mapped out a lot of these songs in your head. Did all of them have set narratives? Because I know piano has like a narrative through that video, but did all of the tunes have set narratives ahead of time?
So piano specifically is actually a cover of an Eric Pritz song that I grew up with in Europe. And Tranquility is a song by Barry Harris, who's an incredible, very important player. At the time when I was composing, I'm very much into symbolism and numerology. And numbers like number 12 or number 5. And at the time I was dealing with the planets and the celestial bodies of planets, and how these planets have been described throughout time, specifically talking about the 5 planets that are Mars, Jupiter, the moon, which is not a planet, but is a celestial body, Venus, and Neptune. Those celestial bodies are important to me because I see how throughout time humanity has tried to use those as inspiration to explain the emotions of humanity, whether we're explaining it through astrology and you're talking about your planet and your signs. Actually, it wasn't Neptune, it was Mercury.
Okay.
So for example, Mercury, the planet of communication, Venus, the planet of love, Jupiter, a planet of joy, of exuberance, and for me, music represents all those inner emotions. So specifically to that project, I kind of wanted to tap in all those different agendas, or all those different places that we can be talking about. So not all of those songs. So this is interesting. Some songs have super deep meaning. You know, some songs, I imagine a whole storyboard. I imagine a whole deeper meaning that I want to put on there.
Yeah, right.
But what I've learned from that, and what I'm working on for the next records, is that I don't actually want to be putting so much meaning, because I want to leave enough space for someone else to put their meaning onto it.
Yeah.
You know, and as a composer, I found that sometimes it's better to not understand the meaning first, because it means something to me, but it will mean something different to you, like completely different. Yeah, you know.
But that's exciting though, because then like I think both are equally valid. You know, something can be. I mean, I feel that way about art, like paintings, drawings. That was the last like medium of art that I came to like have an interest in, and it wasn't because of a lack of interest necessarily, or I should say an investment and not interest. And it wasn't because of a lack of interest, it was because of a lack of understanding. Because like I would look at, you know, like a Jackson Pollock, and I'd be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be seeing here, because I was looking for a very set narrative. And I think maybe that just speaks to youth, because like you kind of, there's so much left that we don't know, and it's like I just want somebody to tell me what I'm supposed to know and what to do and how to do it. And because there wasn't like a house and like a sunny day or a rainstorm or anything like that, I was like, maybe it's insecurity, like at its finest, is like just not diving in and allowing myself to really examine. But yeah, like you said, like I love that though, that you have the audience in consideration whenever you do that. How much of the music is for you and how much of the music is for, you know, not to do a blanket statement of them, but for the audience?
It's for all of us, man. You know, right. I'm gonna roll it back in our conversation about being in COVID, and suddenly we don't have all the things that fed our egos of why we think we're doing good or not, right? We don't have that satisfaction of response of people saying how great or not great we are. And you gave the example of what should I show my Call of Duty top scorer vibe, you know, that's really important to me because it makes me think a lot about what success is, you know, in terms of for musicians, is being successful being able to do a good solo and people clapped at it? Like, is that what success is? And as I've come to learn more about playing this music, it is totally not an individual thing. It's not. It can't. Obviously, I'm part of it, and I'm a vacuum of what I would like to show, but I'm always going to be working with other musicians, or right now I'm working with you. Yeah. So it's not just me, it's us always going back and forth. And I think the success that was blinded to us was always that we did something together. It wasn't that you did something. Yeah. When you took your solo, you still had a band backing you up. So it was never just about you. Yeah. You know? And I think that's really important that now, and this has kind of given me a type of protection in a way, because I'm not so concerned about exactly controlling me and who I am and how am I going to present myself in a sense of wanting to be something for someone. And this, you know, I don't know if this is this kind of talk show we're on, but for me, it's all God, man. Yeah. You know, like, God has a plan. Yeah. The universe has a plan. And if I happen to be able to tap into a part of that plan, then that's the success I want to be a part of. Yeah. Because that involves healing me, healing you, healing everyone around me, you know? Yeah. And in a way, that's better than just me wanting to make something for an audience, because that can get diluted and saturated, and it's just it remains my idea of what I think the audience wants. So like, give the people what they want. They want this. They want this exuberant energy. So that would be one aspect. Or I could direct all my energy to satisfying the musicians, which would leave them behind. So just pick something in the middle. And that something in the middle is always you and the people around you, and it's everybody. But I must say that first and foremost is about a connection between me and myself, and maybe what I would consider to be God or the universe. It's developing a friendship and a relationship in which, so when I am composing, I'm hearing more the possibilities of what can happen rather than, oh, Mathis, you suck because this, you know what I mean? There's a difference between that voice and the voice you want to actually hear. Yeah. And my goal is to always be with this voice, because that voice is also what guides me when we're playing music. Yeah. I don't want to think when I'm playing music, what can I do that's super killing or whatever? Yeah. What can I do that's going to wow people? Yeah. I want to be connected to the voice that is not even concerned about that, you know? This actually makes me think about a story, because you know, we're playing jazz music, and you know, again, words. Yeah. I have this student who was asking me, man, can you? I was practicing soloing. You know, I was practicing my solos, and whenever I get up on stage, it doesn't go the way I want it to go, and I suck. How do I practice that? You know, how do I get better at that? You know, and then my first question is like, why do you want to be really good at taking solos? Like, right. There's a lot of different stuff you could do. You know, you could accompany, and you're basically soloing. So that we have to like get away from that individualistic idea of music. You know. And I told him, listen, man, you can't practice soloing because in the music, you you never know what the band's gonna do. You never know what the song is gonna be. You never know what the groove is gonna be, what the key is gonna be. So practice being comfortable with not knowing what's gonna happen, and practice being comfortable with not knowing what you're gonna do in that moment.
Yeah.
And practice being comfortable with that, you know?
Man, there are a million things that you just said that I wanted to be like, boom, 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 boom. I didn't want to interrupt the train of thought. When you said, I don't know if it's this kind of show, I want to be very clear. It is absolutely this kind of show, man. There are so many things. Like, I'm never one that shies away from conversations about like God and the universe and just like what's going on. And I think what you were saying of like, you know, God has a plan. I want to be a part of that plan. I want to be healing. I hope to provide that healing like aspect of it. Had somebody approached me about that in that way growing up, you know, I was going to say, you know what? That's so funny that I'm correcting myself in real time. I was going to go, maybe this is an off-camera conversation. I was like, no, it's not. Why should we be different on camera than we are off camera? So I'll just dive down into the rabbit hole. And if people go, this is too foo-foo, then they can turn it off, because that's the advent of technology, baby. But like, growing up, my dad was a minister. And I want to be like, I want to preface that my dad is not a malicious man whatsoever, and like always taught us like amazing values and just like love being at the central thing of everything else. But there were a lot of organizations, one in particular that I won't name, that was a religious organization that scarred me for a really long time. A really long time. To this day, I still have about a nightmare about this place every 3 weeks, because they were going down a rabbit hole of this very selective, kind of empowered, what's the right word? Where they were just narrowing in, and they were like, well, we're the people, and you know, like let's exclude a lot of other people, but let's act like we're being inclusive, but we really don't want them in on this, and it was very toxic, and they used that like kind of not mantra, but that, what's the word? Like dogma of like God's plan, the universe, all these different things, but they used it completely in a negative way. In a way where it was like, no, this is God's plan. You know, to justify really obscene things. And the first year I like totally bought into it. And then the second year I was like, what are we doing? Because Lydia and I got together, and they, you know, without just going too deep into it, they had just made me feel as if she was going to be my demise, and told me every day to like leave, like kick her to the curb, you know, and they used that kind of phrase of like God's plan as an attack. And when you're saying this in this light and flipping the script and talking about being healing and how you hope to contribute to that healing, right now, again, the reason why I said maybe this is an off-camera conversation is because it's very vulnerable. We're not really talking about music, but then again, like you said, music is just life experience and how that influences things. And that's influencing like a record that I'm working on right now. So like this right here, you are actively like part of the healing of me that's like kind of chipping away at that you know, scar that's been there for a little bit, or not chipping away at a scar. That's not a right analogy. But,
I understand, no.
But yeah, man, I don't really have a great segue from that. I just thank you.
No, I mean, thank you for sharing, man. And you know, I'm really grateful that there's people like you who remember that there are faces and lives and stories behind the artists, and that's the kind of stuff that I always love. Like whenever I go online, like, these are the type of interactions I want to see. You know, that you know, all the music is out there, but it's like, what are they like? Yeah. You know, like, who, you know, what do they like? Well, how do they feel? How, you know, and I definitely know that I've seen some videos where pieces of advice or life experiences were shared that really helped me. And coincidentally helped me become a better musician.
Yeah.
But it's not about being a good musician.
Yeah.
It's not about, like Herbie Hancock always says this in his book. It's about being a good person.
Yeah.
It's about being a good human first.
Yeah.
That's and I believe that.
Yeah.
And by good person, I don't want to get into the binary of like what's good and what's bad.
Sure.
But perhaps in this conversation, we mean the person that's true to themselves,
Right. Well, I think good and bad decisions are very subjective to who you're talking to. And what I've kind of come to not a conclusion, a resolution on for now. Maybe I shouldn't say resolution. Maybe I should resolve. Basically, I've come to a checkpoint, and I'm open for that to change. Is that it comes down not necessarily to good and bad decisions, but like intent, right? Because you could make a bad decision, but there was no malintent done whatsoever, and you can write somebody off for that reason. But then that's closing off like an entire like aspect of like brotherhood and sisterhood, because it's like, of course, I want to be very clear that accountability is super important. That's where that meets, because it's not about pointing blame, but it's like being like, even if you make a bad decision, even if you make a misstep and it hurts somebody, but it wasn't intended to be received with malintent, you still need to own up to the repercussions of that decision. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned this, but absolutely. And I think that goes, you're talking about brotherhood and sisterhood. That goes with, our communities of our work communities, but also with family. That kind of stuff happens all the time with family.
Especially now.
Yeah, you say something and then there was no malintent, but it was received in a certain way, and what's been said has been said, and the damage has been done. And accountability is what will rectify these things. Being able to be like, you know what? I didn't think I was doing something bad, but the universe presented it that it was. And I'll take that as a lesson, and I'm going to move forward with that, and I'm not going to argue against that.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you feel.
Yeah.
I acknowledge how you feel, and let's move with that, because that's the facts,
Yeah. Ugh. Talking about the importance of silence. I'm talking right now.
Yeah.
I should just be silent.
Let's take three seconds of silence.
I could wait longer, man.
It's funny because
really
in that
good.
moment of silence, I'm just hearing so many things in my head of like, what else we can talk about.
Share,
You know
please.
what I mean? But it's just, it's interesting because the same happens in music. You know, what happens in silence? I think you spoke with Dan like what can be done and what must be done. A breath is important for sure. Breathing and silence, it has been for me the greatest medicine of keeping grounded. When I hear good music, I hear the space in the music. It's not all given to me. There's space. I think we all not that we got to, but the more we enjoy silence and being in silence together, I think the more we'll actually know about each other.
Yeah. I was gonna say but I was like, I'm gonna be silent. Yeah. Because I don't want to say it.
Yeah, it's a funny game, but that silence goes in the compositional process. I compose in silence. And I listen to this voice. But when we're playing, I need to put silence, I need to put breath into what I'm doing so that I can hear what Brian and Dan are doing. When I'm playing music with people, and this is something that I had to learn, is that I have to be actually more focused on what other people are doing than what I'm doing.
Of course.
Because this is gonna happen no matter what. Like
Sure.
the reactions and like my life experience and my values, as long as I work on them and I'm aware of them, that's the work I can do on the side. But when it's time to be present with people, I have to put that away. Like that's the work for me. Now the work is different. Now I have to be totally open to you, to Brian, to Dan.
Yeah.
Because hopefully, and definitely because that's why we play together, they're doing the same with me.
Yeah.
You know? And it always not confused me, but when I saw amazing musicians play together, I'm like, how are they hearing all of this? Like, how can you hear everything that's going on and feel like you're not stepping on any toes? And it's the embrace of silence and the embrace of waiting. We can always wait a little bit longer. All of us, for everything. You know, like, we can always take an extra breath. It's just fascinating. I mean, it's just fascinating because we all hear music in our head, even in silence, which means the music is alive even without these things being around.
Yeah.
So I think we're all connecting to something super deep in silence. For example, you and I are hanging out. We're having a chat. And in the silence, we both feel that, okay, it's time to go now. It's time to get up. But we don't have to talk about it. We both know it because we both heard that.
Right.
And those are the type of things that I'm fascinated about.
Yeah. You know, you've talked so genuinely about how the music is just the most honest expression of you. And you've also talked about how that approach not varies, but is attentive to being with other people as well. I know you have 2 other projects coming out soon, or sometime soon. I know they were teased on the bio.
They were teased.
Teased on the bio. That needs to be a tune. Can you write a tune called "Teased on the Bio"? Actually, "Teased on the Bayou," and
right.
we'll go to a bayou like before you leave.
Right.
No, but there's one that's a solo piano, right? Live at the museum.
Yeah. So the first one that's coming out is coming out winter 2022.
Okay.
And it's a solo piano record I did in January 2019, right before the pandemic. About that record. You'll hear on that record that I'm playing classical, I'm playing stuff from Ravel, I'm playing stuff from Duke Ellington, I'm playing stuff from Willie Lyons Smith. And for that it was really for me to have a deeper connection with my ancestors in the music. Because check this out. You know, when you're saying, when you play, this is what I think you were telling me, it feels like you're not forcing anything and we're hearing all these different influences and stuff. I'll tell you what I do think about when I'm playing. I'm thinking about the ancestors and I'm thinking about the people who've played this music before. And that to me is, I think, an example of me trying to listen, still listening to something else rather than just like, what do I think? You know, me. Because I'm always gonna be me, you know what I mean? There's other wonderful things we can get in touch with.
Yeah.
And so that's something that always happens where I'm playing, and if I'm connected to the music, there'll be certain voices or certain ancestral decisions that actually I don't think I'm making. I feel like it's being suggested
Yeah.
to me of what can happen with the music
Yeah.
next, you know. And so that's something that I really got into in that solo piano record. And the other record that's coming out is, there's a little story behind it. I was supposed to go to a very nice festival this winter in Europe. They've invited me, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. But because of COVID and because of visa stuff and like my passport, if I leave the States, coming back will take me a lot of time. Sure. So I'll just be out there in Europe, and it made me think, man, if I was stuck in Europe for a year, what would I have regretted? You know, what would I have regretted? And I think what I would regret is I've hadn't taken the opportunity yet to record and document all the wonderful relationships I've built through music whilst living here in America. And so I decided that's what I'm gonna do. And I picked 3 rhythm sections of people that I've been working with since I first came here. And I've dedicated 4 songs specifically for those rhythm sections. And the practice in that is because there's a deadline, I have to keep moving forward. It's like, no, this is what's gonna happen. This is the song I'm hearing right now, and this is what it is. And that's the practice of keep going forward, even if you have disbelief in yourself and whatever. Just being with that and being aware of that, and then moving forward. And so we completed the first 4 tracks, recording out in LA. I'll tell you who was recording. Jonathan Pinson, Josh Crumbly, and Braxton Cook.
Amazing.
I love them. We recorded for Braxton when I first came to New York, and we've been close ever since. And so for that project, it kind of entails everything we've been talking about. The compositional process of, okay, I'm going to write specifically for these 4 musicians, and they're going to be originals, and I'm not going to try and create something. I'm just going to be true to what I think will work for them. So that's going to come out in fall 2022. Amazing. Yeah.
Mathis, I'm so excited, man. I will, if we have a couple hours before the show tonight, I want to go back and listen to World Unity like 3 times with all this in mind. I mean, like, truly, that's why I always tell people, I'm like, there's no facade of cool here. Like, I'm going to geek out, like, off camera, I'm going to geek out. On camera, I'm just, like, it makes me so happy, and it's a completely different experience listening to the music after you know the person. Because you know what the intent was. You know, we talk about intent, right? We know what the intent was, and we have a better understanding. I said this earlier, but that's why this show was created. So we could get to know the people behind the music, because, like, I mean, it's a lot like your mom baking you like a beautiful apple pie, you know, and then going and maybe getting a comparable apple pie from H-E-B. It's different. It's different because you know that your mom made that for you with love. You know that she had you in mind, and it wasn't just like another product to put on the shelf, you know. That's so meaningful to me. I'm so excited to go and listen to that. I want to ask you about one other kind of like, you know, sentimental thing is that David Mescatique has been my collaborator and writing partner and confidant and all the above for the past like 5 years. We've released 2 records together, working on another, and it's gotten to a point where he's just like the same. As me, like we totally lock in. It's like this just very, you know, mutualistic, you know, symbiotic relationship, and he can know exactly what my like musical tendencies are, where my interests lie, and he can like give that to me and suggest other things too without even really having to try. It just flows very naturally. Thomas Wing-Linsky, who wrote the arrangements for the big band that we're going to be doing tomorrow, or the majority of them, also knows exactly my tendencies. He's another collaborator of mine that I worked with for the past like 3 years. But Thomas will challenge me on stuff, and he'll go, he's who we were texting in the car the other night, and he was like, he'll tell me all the time, hey, do you know the spinners, you know, the stylistics, you know, Earth, Wind and Fire, like all these things. And he'll challenge me and force me to kind of like, you know, open up to other things. Both of those are incredible relationships, just like that of like Lydia and I's relationship, where I feel seen, heard, considered, cared for. And it's invaluable to me, that relationship. You and Brian and Dan have also worked together in a multitude of different projects. Of course, you do like Circuit Kisser with Dan and all these different things. What is it about each one of them, maybe individually and or collectively, that keeps that musical magnetism strong of why you're always working together?
I think we love each other, and we love the music, and it's probably done similar things for us in our lives. Mm-hmm. Honesty, accountability, vulnerability, all the components that make a creative partnership successful, whether the partners are making music or filming and creating a show.
Yeah.
You know, or whether it's a mother and a father or raising a child, you know. You know, I don't know why it works. It does.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it works because we share that same, we know what it can do. Mm-hmm. There's a sort of faith that it's meant to happen this way.
Yeah.
You know.
Beautiful. Man, let me ask you a couple speed round questions. One, can you think, speed round. Can you think of some of the most meaningful musical experiences that, like, just when you think of like meaningful experiences, is there one or two or three or however many that just immediately pop into your mind and you go, oh man, that was it?
Mm-hmm. There is one I go back to. You know Montreux, the town in Switzerland where they have that festival.
Yeah.
It's a very famous festival. I was accepted into this program called the Montreux, I'm saying it, Montreux Jazz Foundation, and it was a camp that would last about a week and a half. And at the time I'd already was studying at Juilliard and was already living in the States. And I don't know if you found this in your research, but I've also produced techno. Mm-hmm. And especially when I was living in the UK, I fell in love with house music.
Manchester, music. Right?
Yeah, house music, electronic music. All while I was still studying piano, classical, and all this. So for a while, I was kind of conflicted. I felt like I was cheating, you know, because I'm playing the piano, but I love this electronic music, and there's no harmony there. It's just sounds, you know. Yeah. It's just it's different. Mm-hmm. And so I was there in at this camp, and we got to see a concert, and that concert was two drummers, Eric Harland and Sony Emery. So I don't need to do any introduction, like actually, because Eric Harland's from Texas, I think. He's from out here too. An incredible drummer. And Sony Emery is also an incredible drummer, coming from a a little bit of a different school, having played with Earth, Wind, and Fire. So for me, it kind of felt like Eric Harlan represented to me the New York jazz scene and something I've dreamt being a part of in that sense. And then Sonny Emery kind of represented this love that I've always have for this groove, this certain dance music that is also related to my love of house music, because there's a connection to me in that beat. And so the show begins and they start playing drums. So Eric does his thing and then Sonny does his thing and then him, and then suddenly something happens where like the drums just became one.
Yeah.
And I started bawling. I was crying because it made me realize that it doesn't have to be one or the other. Both those things that I loved so much worked together in that moment.
Yeah.
And it made me realize I don't have to just be one thing. I don't have to be just this. There is a place where there is unity.
Yeah.
In all of it. And so that moment was really important for me, and just helping me release this pressure that I put on myself as I'm a young teenager, like in New York, 17, 18, obviously on top of being in New York, our bodies are going through things and we're trying to figure stuff out. I basically was still going through puberty when I came to it.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, still right now. But that was really important for me, for what it represented and what it made me realize. I felt like I learned something, so it just freed me. It freed me to hear those drums playing together. It really did.
Oh man. I'm in such a good place right now. I'm so happy. I'm so happy at this moment. I think that's how I started. I said, like, how are you now in this moment? And I guess now I'm telling you how I feel. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful for you, man. I mean, I was really nervous to be perfectly honest with you, man. I mean, just like listening. I mean, just like all the music is so good. I was because I had like a bit of a rapport with Dan, and Brian, of course, but I was nervous, but man, this has been so amazing. Let me ask you a couple more questions.
Please,
we'll get out of here. I'll ask you three more. One, can you think of the greatest piece of advice you've ever been given?
There's so many wonderful little aphorisms that I've come across. Whether I've read them in a book or someone gave it to me. But here's one that I really like. Don't think about what to do. Do what you think. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I was like taking that in. I was like, yeah.
Don't think about what to do. Do what you're thinking. Because what you're thinking is you. And there's nothing beautiful than someone being in touch with themselves. And that actually kind of relates to what can be done versus what must be done.
Right.
What must be done is you got to be you, and I got to be me.
Yeah, that's what I thought about when you said, what would I regret if I was stuck in Europe for a year, and you're like, what must be done?
Yeah,
and that record.
Yeah, that was that thing. It's like, oh, I got to do this right now.
Yeah.
It was no longer like, oh, I could record with my friends and we could do this. It's like, no, you got to do this right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of records, the second question is, if there is a record, could be anything, does not have to be jazz, could be anything at all, that you would suggest everyone go listen to as soon as they finish watching this, what would it be?
a record that I feel people should go and listen to once this is over and done.
What's speaking to you today?
Earlier today, I was listening to Chick Corea. I love that piano player.
Any specific record?
I was listening to the Triology record.
Okay.
With Christian McBride and Brian Blade. To be honest, to that question, if I may, as opposed to telling someone to listen to a specific record, I would tell them, look at their life. Look at how the records go from one to another. You know, see if you can feel their decisions, if you can feel like the growth.
Yeah.
You know, feel that growth so that it can inspire you to grow too. Like a wonderful artist will happily grow into a version of themselves, and that will inspire other people to be like, hey, like, I'm not this finite being either. You know, it's not like this, what you get is what you get. I think the magical thing about being on this planet is that we can invent ourselves and we can create ourselves. So I would say, let's get in touch with that. Let's get in touch with creating wonderful versions of ourselves that feel right. Yeah. You know?
A gift, Mathis, a gift. The last question, and it seems funny, you know, to end with something like this on this particular episode, because I think I told you about it last night, but because of the fact that we're talking about like presentness and gratefulness and all of these really kind of positive mindsets. And then the last question is, we all have gigs from hell. Can you think of a crazy, like, hellish gig where things went wrong and, you know, and you just couldn't believe what was happening? So maybe it seems counterintuitive to ask that question, but for the sake of continuity, or
but this is really important, because I actually don't see myself as like everything's positive. Not everything's positive.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, like, it may seem sometimes there's more negative than positive. And honestly, like, nothing I think is more dangerous than dismissing emotions that need to be felt and writing off as just, oh, I'm being optimistic. Like, that's really dangerous stuff. Because when stuff goes bad, at least you get to learn something. Yeah. You know, you get to learn something from it. And I have a couple.
Hit me.
I have one. It was this, I was very young. I was like 10, and this is when we were living in Glasgow. Okay. I was part of this big band competition, and I had this Casio keyboard. You know, the DJ.
I know, yeah.
And we were playing around midnight, and it was a competition it was in the concert hall. It was like 2,000 people there. And, you know, I'd been playing piano for a while, like, since I was 3, and so, like, people knew, like, oh, Mathis, yeah, he's gonna hook it up. You know, he's this young 10-year-old. It's like, hopefully that'll help us win, you know? So there was, like, this little pressure, like, oh, here's Wonder Kid, like, is he gonna do it? Yeah. He didn't. So we start the tune. We go boo 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 boo, and I'm like so nervous. I'm like getting ready. I got my little Casio keyboard, and then the arrangement starts with, like, after the intro. Then I would play the melody. I pressed the wrong button on this thing, and it just goes DJ. And I'm just like. So everyone's looking at me, and like the conductor is just like, you just look at me like, oh, what's going on? And I'm like, oh God. So I turn it off, and it goes, it's like a big thing. So now this whole time the band is still like with the brushes still playing the tune, and I turn it back on, and I try to do something else, and it goes DJ, and it does like another crazy beat. It's awful. Like, it's awful. And then the conductor just comes to me and just like, he just rips out the lead from the keyboard. And I'm just stood there for the rest of the tune, just like twiddling my thumbs, like, I fucked this one up. I fucked it up. And I did. We didn't win. Oh my God, I don't know, like, I mean, there's no deep lesson from there other than like, had to learn that not to press the DJ button when I was trying to find a sound. Like, it was awful. I would press and it'd be like this like Yamaha DX7 sound, and it just went so bad, man. It went so bad.
Oh my God.
So that was one of them.
I mean, Dan has one of the biggest horror stories, but that might be the funniest story. I mean, 63 episodes we've filmed. That might be the funniest story I've heard. Oh my God, because it's so, there's no returning. No. And it's like, and it was a ballad.
It was a ballad. It was the piano feature. I don't know why they didn't make me play like a real piano.
It's on them.
It's just not my fault.
Yeah,
but oh man,
Mathis, truly a gift. It's been so much fun to be with you.